Welcome back to Joe Stonner Boxing. Let's talk about Dillian Whyte because he's been in, I call it the press, but he's been giving a lot of interviews anyway. A lot of them are on YouTube. And he's talking about coming back. He is going to fight on the undercard of his protege, Fabio Wardley, who is fighting Justice Hooney. And Dillian, I don't think he's got an opponent yet, but he was talking to good old Dev Sandwich. I don't know. I watch a lot of these videos. I can never remember which video I've seen on what channel, but old Dev works for Queensbury, doesn't he? So it was probably one of their channels. And Dev was asking him various questions about different people, and Dillian's basically saying, I'd like to have another shot at the title. When I fought Fury, I had a lot going on. I just didn't turn up, he said, which I think is a fair comment. He's honest enough to admit that. He said he used the old "it is what it is" line. He didn't turn up. He just didn't get the job done. He said that he started listening to his corner, which sounds like a strange thing to do because if you're a boxer, I suppose and you've got a corner, you're meant to listen to him, aren't you? I mean, there's no point in having a corner man if you don't listen to him, if you don't try and learn off him. But Dillian said, I started listening to him at the wrong time. Look, sometimes things happen and you just second best on the night. Doesn't mean you're a bad fighter. But he wants another title shot. That's ultimately what he wants, he says. And I don't know. Is he going to get one? I mean, he's 37. And certainly he's saying the right things. Well, he's talking about, he's slagging people off. He's never been shy in coming forward, Dillian. But if he does get another title shot, he is going to need, at the very least, one win over, I'd say, a pretty big name or a ranking opponent. Now, they did ask him again about Joe Joyce because he pulled out of the Joe Joyce fight and Filip Hrgović came in and Hrgović ended up winning that fight. And they asked Dillian, or Dev asked Dillian, do you want to fight? Do you still want to fight Joe? And he said, well, no, not really, because those people will say he's past it. I'd rather fight Hrgović. All right, fair enough. You'd rather fight Hrgović. Yeah, if you beat Hrgović, that would be a very, very good win. I would certainly pick Hrgović to win that fight. But Dillian's a fighter. He talked about loving fighting. He said, someone taught me how to box, but I've always been a fighter. I guess he was implying that he is a born fighter. And that's okay. That's okay. That's, it's probably true. He had a very rough upbringing and so on. He doesn't speak kindly of some of his contemporaries. He was asked about Derek Chisora, and he said, Derek's a prick. Derek's a scumbag, he called him. He said that he kicked me when I was down. He says one thing, his opinion changes like the wind, And he was very unflattering about Anthony Joshua in a different interview. He said that he chats shit and that he's basically a sort of strange guy. He seemed to be implying that Joshua psychologically sort of, flits back and forth, changes like the wind, you might say. And psychologically, I think Joshua is quite an intriguing, curious case. I think a lot of his problems post the Andy Ruiz fight, which he never fully recovered after being stopped by Andy Ruiz. He was always a little bit gun-shy. There were sort of doubts in there, and he seemed to spend a long time scratching around for answers. And I thought this was kind of intriguing because Joshua, on the rise up to winning the title and collecting belts, was a very formidable opponent. And in fact, as I'm sure you know, he had that firefight with Dillian Whyte and knocked him out. He was the first person to beat Dillian Whyte. and the first of 3 to knock him out with an uppercut, because all 3 of Dillian's defeats have been by uppercuts. Well, if you look at what are the chances of Dillian getting another title shot, never mind winning it? Well, his last title shot was in 2022. It's just over 3 years ago. I think it was April 2022. And he got knocked out by Fury in 6 rounds. And as he says, he didn't turn up. But since then, he's only had 3 fights. He had the Jermaine Franklin fight, which was later that year, and he won a majority 12-round decision. Close cards. One of them was 115-115, which is 5 rounds each and two drawn. And the other 2 were 116-112 to Dillian, which I think would probably, I can't remember what I had it, 115-113, 116-112 maybe. But Whyte was given a good workout, but I thought he won that fight. And then he failed the drug test in just before the proposed rematch with Joshua. Now, this is not the first time he's failed a drugs test. And I just, I can understand why people got on Conor Benn's case, and I was one of them, because of his attitude and his self-entitlement and all the crap that was talked, not just by him, but by Eddie Hearn and all the people around him, and the fact that he's been cleared, which he hasn't been cleared, and all, so on and so forth. What about Dillian Whyte? Dillian Whyte just disappeared, kept low, didn't say much. Was he ever punished? Was he ever fined? Was he ever given a ban of any sort? Was it a silent ban? I don't know, but this is not the first time he's failed. I mean, the one with the one several years ago against Oscar Rivas, I think that was kind of thrown out on technicalities. I don't know, can't remember the exact details, but he also served the ban very early on in his career, which he said was, a drink. He had a drink that had something in it, the energy drink or whatever it was. What about this one then? Bad tests seem to have followed Dillian around his entire career. Barley disappeared. He didn't get any kind of punishment at all. And then in 2024, about 18 months, was it 16, 18 months after the Franklin fight, he ends up in Castlebar in Ireland, which is a far cry from whatever it was, Wembley Arena or Wembley Stadium against Joshua or whatever it was. Certainly it was Wembley Stadium against Fury. But he ends up in Castlebar fighting Christian Hammer. What was left of Christian Hammer, who just moved around the ring for 3 rounds and then basically just quit. Said, I've had enough now. Okay. What was the point of that? I don't know. Maybe lose a bit of ring rust. And then that was in March of last year, and then he fought Ebenezer Tete it was back end of the year, when it might have been November, December of last year, and he stopped him in 7 rounds. Tete retired after 7, so that was the second retirement victory in a row that Dillian had. But he didn't look particularly good doing it, and Tete was absorbing some big punches, big punishment, which is kind of ironic because he got blown out in a round by Fraser Clark only last month. Tete, by the way, says he's 36. He looks close to 66. I mean, it's ridiculous how old he looks. He must have had a fucking hard life. Never mind Dillian. Ebenezer Tete, my God. But he took Dillian 7 rounds, landed a few decent punches. And even if you go back to just before the Tyson Fury fight, I mean, if you go back 2 fights before that, Dillian was knocked out in 5 rounds by Povetkin. Okay, and Povetkin was at the back end of his career. He was at the end of his career. Whyte was winning that fight and then got chinned with an uppercut, 1-punch knockout. He then came back and knocked out Povetkin in 4 in the rematch, and Povetkin quit immediately afterwards. So Dillian, I mean, I don't know, a title shot. Stranger things have happened, of course. But he's escaped the wrath of the PD, of failed PD tests. The board don't seem interested in punishing him. he seems to have escaped all that. Obviously, failing that test cost him some serious money because he was going to fight Joshua. And then his next fight, in fact, was in Castlebar in Ireland for God knows how much. It was chump change, I'd imagine. So he's probably looking, sticking around to try and get some of that Riyadh money. And he said that he's spoken to Frank Warren, possibly with a view to fighting one of Frank's many, many heavyweights. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't think Dillian Whyte has got much left. I think his punch resistance is pretty much gone. I don't think he looked particularly impressive against Tete. He couldn't really tell much about the hammer fight because that was just a little sparring session. And prior to that, I thought he won against Franklin, but he didn't look great. I think all those sparring sessions, hard spars and training camps, and the fact he's been fighting all his life, I think it's probably taken its toll. And I don't see Dillian Whyte tearing up any trees in the heavyweight division. I think he's a name. I think he can make a bit more money. Can he earn another title shot? Again, stranger things have happened, but I wouldn't put my money on it, put it that way. So you tell me what you think about Dillian. What do you think of him? What do you think's going on? What do you think he's looking for? Is he really looking for a title shot, or is he just looking for some money from the Saudi table? Let me know. Let me know what you think. And who would you have him fight next? Yeah, give me your opinions, and thank you for watching. Please, if you like the video, hit the like button, and also subscribe to the channel if you're new. That would help us out, and spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Looking forward to reading what you've got to say, and bye for now.